Welcome. I am recording after our 24-day backpacking trip. This is such a crazy trip. We just left from the trailhead not knowing if we were going to be able to even accomplish this as a family. However, spoiler alert, we did. And I am here to share about the stories. So I am including everything from what we packed, how we dealt with diapers on the trail. I'm going to share about some bear encounters. I also am sharing about the most technical part and how I mentally approached that and went through that. It's all in here. I also want to say Baby Sky did join me for like half the episode, and so you will hear little baby noises. But they're pretty cute, so enjoy.
Welcome to Let's Go Outside, a podcast bringing moms together to chat about the raw, unfiltered reality of doing the exploring we love after having kids. No matter your comfort level of adventuring with the little ones, this is a space to have honest conversations about the real struggles of getting out the door with the kiddos. I'm Danica, a mama living in a small mountain town who's totally obsessed with healthy food and taking my kids outside every single day. I professionally guided backpacking trips in the Canadian Rockies, and I'm certified as a Leave No Trace instructor. On the show, you'll hear real experiences from other moms, plus tips on gear, trail snacks, and the best practices in the wilderness. Whether it's hiking, camping, backpacking, skiing, or traveling the world you want to do more of, this is your place to learn, find encouragement, and strip away any comparison. Come embrace both motherhood and the outdoors. Stick around. This is your place. Welcome to the Outdoor Mom Club. Hello and welcome to the Let's Go Outside podcast. I am so stoked to be coming to share about our huge backpacking trip. So if you do not know, my family decided to attempt Section B of the Great Divide Trail. The Great Divide Trail is this really cool trail that runs from Waterton all the way north of Jasper. So along the Continental Divide in Canada, fully alongside the Alberta and British Columbia border. So there's one section called Section B, and it starts from Coleman and goes all the way to Kananaskis, and that is close to where we live. But the more we thought about it, the more we were like, what if we could do that section with our kids? The cool thing is that section does not need permits, so you don't need to book campsites. You can be more flexible. If you want to hear more about how we chose to do this and my pre-trip ramblings, I would definitely encourage you to go listen to part 1 of this podcast, where I share all about how we prepped for this trip and my thoughts and ideas for hiking long distances with children. Now we are post-trip, which honestly, we haven't even been home a week yet, and I am astonished. I am just still in awe that we did it, that it happened, that we were out there. I have to tell you right now that there was many moments of me fantasizing, quitting, and going home and sleeping in my bed and having a shower. However, the more we got through it, the more I was like, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do it. But I have to tell you, when we started the trail, we were not sure if we were going to be able to do it all. You know, we were just going to take it one day at a time and see, how's this going to go? Can we cope? Is this actually even possible? And I think when you take something on that big, that's kind of how you have to look at it. You go into it well prepared and you've thought about it fully. However, also be able to be flexible and open-handed. I'm so excited. I'm going to share some stories from the trip. I want to share the gear that we packed. I want to share about how we hiked with children. A lot of people want to know about babies and diapers, so I'm going to share all of that. It is kind of hard to pack all of this into a podcast episode. I just kept making more and more notes as I was preparing for this, and so we'll see how we go. But that's my goal, to share this. I think this idea came up early in the year to do this trip when we realized Daniel would have a paternity leave. He never gets the summer off. It's always crazy for us. So we were like, oh my goodness, this is the summer. If we want to do it, let's try it. Also, Sky is light enough that we can carry her. She's 6 months old. We have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. The 3-year-old can finally hike. He is the wild card. We're not sure how far he can go. Our 6-year-old really is stoked about this, but let's give it a go. I was pretty worried about my fitness level, honestly, because the last year, pretty much I'd been pregnant most of the time and did not get out very much. I did do one backpacking trip, me and the boys, last year, which was to Elk Lakes, which is actually on this same trail, but we did a 2-night trip, and it was 1.7 kilometers. So very, very small section compared to the 198 kilometers we just did. So yeah, there was not a lot of hiking last year. Anyway, so we had to jump into that. In May, before we even committed to going on the trip, I was like, you know what, we're going to start hiking now. We're going to start mentally preparing for this for the boys and for myself. And so we did a bunch of hiking, and I wanted to increase our capacity and just increase my endurance. At one point, we did a 13-kilometer hike with 500 meters of elevation, and we did it in 7.5 hours. And so I was like, whoa, like that's our biggest day. That would be our biggest day on this trip. They can do it. This is amazing. Also, 7.5 hours is pretty great for a 13-kilometer hike. We did another hike that was like an overnight trip with Daniel, and also, once again, I was like, oh my goodness, that was a lot of elevation, a lot of kilometers. The boys did good. It was long. It was a lot of coaching, but I think it's doable. So after those 2 big days, 2-night trip and 1 big day hike, we based our trip off of that, which I would highly recommend trying to just get out as much as you can that season before you do a big backpacking trip, because you can kind of base what you can do off of that. With kids, they change so much every year, so it's really helpful to do it the same season to see where you're at. Anyway, so we based the trip off this. So we were doing somewhere between 8.5 to, I think our biggest day was 12 kilometers, 8.5 to 12 kilometers in one day. I would have to say, now looking back, we realized that both those trips that we based what we thought our family could do, we were on trails that were wide quad trails or dirt roads. And so in that sense, we could hold hands, we could talk to each other. There was no logs to cross, there was no bushes brushing against us. And so we could actually hike so much faster. When we actually got out to the trip, it was long, and it was longer than that. And for the first 2 weeks, Daniel and I were like, oh my goodness, this is a big route plan. And like, we were planning to have more chill time. We were expecting to get to camp sooner. Like, can we change anything? Should we do anything? And there was very minimal tweaks felt like we could make once we were out there, just because we had 3 food drops. But we were also monitoring the kids and thinking like, okay, can they do this? Where are they at? Where are we at? We were hiking about 1 kilometer an hour. A lot of the days were 9 or 10 kilometer days. And so they were 9 or 10 kilometers on the trail. That was full on. And so if I was to do this trip again, I would say, I would like to do a 30-day plan. So if you're thinking about this specific section, you can message me and I will let you know my thoughts. But I wanted to say overall, for people in general planning a backpacking trip with kids, try to go on some accurate trails, as in some trails that are similar to what you will be hiking on, to try and gauge where your kids are at and how long it will take you. In the 24 days, we did have 2 fully rest days where we did not hike at all, and we had 2 other days that were very short, about 3 or 4 kilometers, and so they were like half days. So there's about, I would say, 4 rest days. That's what I'm gonna say. I think a lot of the time we were asking ourselves, where are we at with the kids? Can the kids do this? And something that I kept coming back to was thinking about, are the boys acting out more or more frustrated, having a harder time than they would at home? And I think my answer was, you know what? They're having a hard time on this trail when they're hungry and when they get bored. And honestly, that's pretty comparable to at home. You know, they're going to have maybe 1 or 2 meltdowns, mini meltdowns, not like major meltdowns a day, and not both of them, more the youngest one. And that's pretty comparable to at home. And that's what I was kind of thinking about in my brain. They were so capable physically to do this trail. The hard part was when they got bored, which is so fair. You're 3 and 6. There was a lot of coaching and encouraging and motivating with candy. We aren't a huge candy family, but on this trail, it was like all goes, you know. We had a big bag of candy. We did section B, but we broke it into 4 sections because we had 3 food drops. And so we took our first food drop, and then we had 3 more after that. So for each section, we had a big bag of candy, and we ate it all. We were getting up around 6:30 a.m. The kids waking up around 7 a.m. And we were trying to pack up within an hour 20 minutes. And then we were on the trail around 8:30, I would say. And then we had at least 3 packs off breaks in a day to change diapers, one long lunch break where we cooked hot lunches because it was lighter weight and smaller and easier to pack, and it was a good way to have a break with the kids. So Daniel would often run ahead and boil water, pour it over our food, and wait 10 minutes, and then we would catch up and we would all eat lunch together. And then we would keep hiking, have an afternoon break, and then we got to camp anywhere from 4 o'clock to 6 p.m., I would say. And that's kind of how a typical day went. And then when we get there, we would often set up the tent. Daniel would find a place to set up a bear hang. We would have a campfire, which, spoiler alert, that's how we burned all Sky's diapers, which would take about an hour and a half. I'll dive more into that soon. We would have dinner, the boys would explore. So every single campsite either had a creek or a lake. And if you know kids, they love water. So that was just so fun and so like such a blast. You know, all kids love new things, I think. And so to show up at a new creek or a new lake every night was a huge highlight. I personally also am obsessed with different kinds of water, so I loved it. That was so fun. And so by the end of the day, they loved to just take their shoes off and go and explore. While we were hiking, I used a lot of different tactics and ideas to motivate and encourage the kiddos. I know that this is a huge question, like, oh my goodness, how did you get your kids to hike this far and this long? And I honestly thought that once we got a week in or a week or 2 weeks in, they would be like, okay, we know the drill. Like, we're going to go, we're going to hike. And to an extent, they did know the drill, but to an extent, the like boredom and distraction and on the trail that did come up every day, especially when we hiked a hill or how hard it was, came up every day. And so we did have to encourage and motivate and play games and make it fun. And so some of the ways we did that was storytelling. I have a story that I built based on these 2 characters, and I would kind of build in stuff that they are interested in or stuff from my childhood that I would like put into the story to make interesting for them every single day. And so I probably told 2 hours of that story every day, and it was the same characters, and they loved that. That just made like having that format, if that makes sense, made it easier for me to build on the story. At one point, they wanted me to add dragons into the story, and I was like, this is my nonfiction story that's like really lovely and you know, like just like could happen in real life, and maybe this is like, you know, we'll do this together one day. And they were like, we want a dragon, and I was like, all right, fine, you can have a dragon. So I had to add a dragon into the story, which was amazing. And we had this awesome story about a dragon. That's my side note. Something fun that I did, I told them, you guys get a big prize when you get home. I'm so proud of you. You guys are incredible. Like, this is so fun. And it's also really hard work. And we're doing it together. And I was like, I'm going to get you a surprise. And they were like stoked. And so when we got cell service for the first time, which was also probably like 18 days in, we're on Fording River Pass. We got cell service. I log into Amazon and I bought them both a different dragon Lego set so that by the time we got home, it would be on our kitchen table and I could be like, oh my goodness, you guys, I am so proud of you. This is a surprise for you. You guys did amazing. That was super fun. That's a really random note, but so fun. And I was just so happy to do that as their mom. You know, it's fun to like give your kids treats. So that was a really fun thing to do. I tried to do stories on the phone, like audio books and like kid stories on the phone. My youngest was not into that. Nah, thank you. And then my older one, 6 years old, he just couldn't hear it very well. So when he held the phone himself, he enjoyed that. So that worked a little bit. We did a little bit of that. I brought like these mini tiny animals and we would hide them on the trail and then they would have to find them. That was really fun. And we didn't do that every day, but that worked. With my youngest one, there was a lot of points where we did let him rest or he needed a rest. You know, we would take that. But there was also times where it was like, okay, this has been a long time. We actually have to get to our campsite, like for safety reasons and just like logistics and just to like keep doing life and to have our meals, right? And so we did have to encourage him and push him a little bit. The thing that I found worked the best for him was saying, okay, mama's gonna start hiking in 10 seconds. And so if you wanna hike in front of me or beside me, I'm gonna leave in 10 seconds. So I would count out loud to 10. And then usually at that point, like it clicked in his brain, like, okay, I have to finish what I'm doing. I have to let go of this rock. And then he would run ahead of me and go. And that worked so well because often I'd be like, okay, we're leaving now, you know, and you have to like, we're going without you. And you'd go ahead and then they'd be like, no, and like be very upset and sad. And that doesn't always work. So we kind of needed to like trigger that in his brain. In 10 seconds, you need to stop what you're doing. And then him hearing me count really, really helped. Those are the things that worked the best, but I think it's so different from kid to kid. Another thing that worked really, really well was splitting the family up. And usually I wouldn't want to do that, but I think when the boys got quality time with mom and dad, it really helped them. You know, they just really enjoyed that time and it helped them hike more. And so often I would go ahead with Koa and Daniel would stay back with Clay and they would just start talking to us and they would distract themselves and they would go, you know, I feel like I'm the same. Give me a little chit chat and I'm a happy hiker. So that was really good. I would like to say on that note, we had Rocky Talkies, which are a long distance walkie talkie made for the mountains. And they were incredible. We both had them hooked onto our shoulder straps the whole entire trip. And yes, they are heavier, but not crazy heavy. Like they're just, yeah, they exist. They have weight. um, and that is something that worked so well. And usually we were just turning them on twice a day when we separated or if Daniel went ahead to make lunch for us and we could radio. Which, another story time, Daniel went ahead to make lunch one day, or he went ahead to go get water because there was one day that we ran out of water. We knew that there was going to be no creeks on the trail and we brought a pretty minimal amount of water bottles just because it's heavy and there is a lot of creeks most days. And so there's this one day, it took us quite a long time. It was very hot. He had to run to go get us more water. We turned the Rocky Talkies on and I get him panting saying, oh my goodness, I just saw a bear. And I was like, my Atlanta, like I'm back here with 3 kids. I cannot do anything. And then he's like, okay, I just backed away. I'm just going to wait a while and then I'm going to go back and like past where he was to the creek and get water and then I'm gonna come back up to you. And so then he lets me know like, okay, the bear ran away, I'm going down there. Where he was going was Cache Creek, if you know the GDT, and there is a bear bear locker there. And so he put all of our food there. He put the Rocky Talkie on the top and then he went to go fill up the water bottles. But as he left his Rocky Talkie, I'm like radioing him, are you okay? I haven't heard from you. And I was looking at my watch and every 2 minutes I was like sending him like another message. And I think I sent him 3 messages, but it must have been just in that time where he was filling water and talking to a person. I was so psyched out. Like my brain was just going through everything of, oh my goodness, how am I gonna get down there with my kids and help Daniel? Anyways, I don't want to go there anymore right now because that was like freaky, but all was okay. The bear was so scared of Daniel and just took off. So it was fine. And on that note, we never saw any bears as a family. Well, I'll tell you in a minute how I'm wrong there, but we never saw any bears in the backcountry when we were together as a family. And I've heard this from so many other families that you're just so loud that they just don't come close to you. There was one other time where Daniel went up ahead to make lunch and there was a mama bear and her cub and the bear charged him. It's called a bluff charge when they want to scare you away but they don't actually, or they're not going to actually go after you. But Daniel said 10 out of 10 adrenaline. It was scary. Once again, got a message on the Rocky Talkie. Not a fan of that. Him totally out of breath, but he was totally okay. He came back to us. We had lunch where I was, and we kept moving forward. When we got to Kananaskis, we were in the campground. We were at a place where we were seeing cars and pavement after 24 days in the wilderness. And that is when, as a family, we saw a bear, which I am not surprised about at all. And most people would understand. They hang out in campgrounds that are very established with where they can smell food, where there's been food before. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And we were all fine. We saw it really far away, and it was actually really special to like show the boys a bear from a safe distance, and it was totally good. I want to jump into food now. We'll do food, and then I'll jump into gear, and we'll keep going. So for breakfast, we mostly did granola, freeze-dried yogurt, which I made, and oatmeal packets, which was just like instant oats that I added a bunch of our favorite things to, like chia seeds, flax seeds. I did some brown sugar, some cinnamon, milk powder. That was really good. That was a huge hit. For lunches, like I mentioned, we decided to do hot lunches. The boys mostly ate rice and beans. We also had the microwave version of macaroni and cheese because we found out that you could just add hot water and let it sit for a few minutes and it was fine. That did not fill Daniel and I up, so we didn't use that, but the boys loved. One of the boys loved that, and that worked well. So I just dumped them out of the microwave containers and put them in a bag to use. And then I had made a bunch of quinoa soup, which quinoa soup is just so nutrient dense, high in protein, and rehydrates super well out of the dehydrator. And so I would make like a curry stew and just add hot water and rehydrate it, and it was perfect. I also had a potato soup version where I put in a ton of cottage cheese, lemon zest. It was delicious, and that was with quinoa also. So that was like super, super good. For dinners, because we were out there almost 25 days, my goal was to do 5 different meals and rotate them through them 5 times each to make it easy. For the most part, we stuck to that. So we did some pastas, and I actually pre-cooked the pasta and the sauce just to make it faster once we got out there, and so then I took the cooked pasta and the sauce and dehydrated it on trays, and all we needed to do was add water once we were out there. We did that with stir fry and brown rice. Another meal that we loved was a Thai coconut shrimp soup. It's from Mitchell's Soup Co., and that is a Vancouver brand where they like put the dried soup in those like a plastic sleeve, like layered. You pretty much just dump it into a pot with water and add a few ingredients, and it's really easy. The thing is, you need to make this at home beforehand because it takes quite a long time to cook. And so once you do that, then you dehydrate it and you just add water once you're out backpacking. And so that's something else we did. We did some ramen. I like to get the brown rice ramen noodles from Costco because they're more nutrient dense and they actually have protein in them. And we added freeze-dried eggs to that and dehydrated vegetables. We're working on a sauce for that still, I'd say, but that was another meal we had. Another one that I love is a mushroom stroganoff recipe, and it's got a cashew nutritional yeast sauce that you just spread on the dehydrator sheets. It dries, and then you eat that. It's so delicious. Okay, those are mostly what we rotated through. I also did taco bowls, which was amazing. So I meant to say this before I started talking about meals. If you haven't heard of a freeze dryer or a dehydrator, those are 2 different things. So a dehydrator dries things out at a lower temperature until the moisture is all gone, and that usually takes about 8 to 12 hours. And then there's such thing as a freeze dryer, and that is a more expensive machine that also takes the moisture out in a freezing method. I don't know all the logistics of it. However, it ends up being like lightweight, and you can rehydrate it super quickly, and it tastes so much like the real version of it, and it's really great for vegetables, or like fresh stuff. So our neighbor has one of these machines, and so that was pretty amazing that she was so generous to let us use it. And so that machine takes about 2 days minimum to freeze dry something, so it's quite a long process. So because we started prepping for this trip a month in advance, I felt like we didn't have a ton of time to use it. So we had, for the burrito bowls, we had brown rice, we had freeze-dried guacamole, freeze-dried salsa, freeze-dried grated cheese, and freeze-dried shrimp. And that was delicious. It was so good. Definitely my favorite. highly recommend if that's an option for you to freeze dry something. Okay, something to know about the food. We have not done a through trip before. Daniel and I have not done a long trip before. We did not realize that as the days and the weeks would go by that we would get so much more hungry. But this did happen. The first week we were fine, and most of the second week we were fine, and then just as our second food drop was coming, we got so hungry. We were super hungry at every single meal. We would eat just enough and then be hungry again. And so by our third food drop, I got a friend to run out and get us a bunch of more food that we could have, and I was so grateful for that, because that was really good. Daniel was so generous and kind, and because I was breastfeeding, he always made sure that I was full. And I know that he was hungry at a bunch of meals, but he always took care of me. We also had a snack bag for every single day, and this had 3 7-packs in it, which we would share. Some meat sticks, some like a little packet of honey for everybody, an almond butter pack for everyone, fruit roll-ups that I had made. The recipe for that is on my food blog if you want to make. Instead of just dehydrated fruit, I like blend it and dehydrate it and make it into fruit roll-ups. And then we had 3 or 4 bars, which we could have packed more bars, I would say. And then we had like 2 electrolyte packs. On top of that, we had a big bag of trail mix for each section, a bag of chickpeas, a huge block of Parmesan cheese because it's high in protein and it's more aged, it's harder, so it will last longer. We would eat it within the first couple days, and then we had a bag of candy. So that was all the food that we had. I would say that we often dove into the food in the morning because just the way the trail works, we are always, you're always going up from a creek or a water source, so it's usually always going up a hill to start the day, most cases. And so we needed more motivation, so we often had bars with the boys in the morning, or because the breakfasts were small. So that's what we did. Okay, that's enough about food. If you want to hear more about that or nerd out more about that, message me because I love talking about food. Okay, let's talk about gear. I know lots of people love to hear what we packed and what happens, so I will let you know what was really useful or the new things that we got for this trip. To start off, this is a fun thing to start with. When we did our practice trip, we realized Sky's 6 months old, so she doesn't really want to lie down by herself anymore. She wants to kind of see what's going on. She wants to be in our arms, or she wants to sit up, but she's not strong enough to sit up by herself. So this is kind of tricky. So we realized that it would be really, really helpful if we got a backpacking chair, which is definitely more weight, more space. And I know if you are a long distance through hiker that packs super lightweight, you're gonna be like, oh my goodness, that's such an unnecessary piece of gear. But you're also gonna be like, oh my goodness, you had a baby, of course you need that. We got a Halonox chair, which was so helpful. We used it every day, all day. We would put her in that in a safe spot, still watching her, and that was really helpful when we're trying to set up camp. I learned so much about through hiking and just the community and the culture of it on this trip. We met so many amazing people, and they were so kind and the coolest people, and I'm just grateful that we did, because every time we saw people, it put us in such good spirits, all of us, the kids too, but Danielle and I especially, and we were just so encouraged to talk to more people and just get connected, and we just love that. So if you were someone that we met out there, it was so great to meet you. But I do want to say I'm so impressed by these backpacks. I mean, we just had to carry so much stuff because we're carrying stuff for 5 people, right? When you're carrying stuff for babies and kids and stuff, you need it all. But some of these backpacks were between like 7.5 to 15 pounds, like base weight, before they add their food to their packs. And I'm just so impressed, like how lightweight you can go, like how much you can push yourself to the limits of being on the edge of minimalism and what you need, and it's really impressive. And there's such cool gear out there these days, really cool. I think what I was thinking about a lot of the trip was how it's really great for families these days that we can tap into the lightweight gear or just the best gear out there to help us go further, even if we're not like, we don't have a base weight of that light, but like we can get the super lightweight sleeping bag, or tent or water filter that is going to help us go further with our children. Even though our bags can't be that light, they can be smaller and we can reduce in so many different areas. So I'm grateful. And the difference is the people that have these really lightweight packs are, we met people hiking often 25 kilometers to 30 kilometers a day, but we also met someone doing 50 kilometers a day. He was going to do 4 days of 50 kilometers, which is insane to me. Okay, I got a new sleeping quilt, which was so good. It's so lightweight and so small. And so it's from Enlightened Equipment, and it is for -12, and that was amazing and perfect and really good for when I needed to breastfeed in the middle of the night. It was super fun to like get something without a zipper. So that was a fun upgrade. Eventually I'd love to get a double mat. I think that would be super helpful. We didn't end up getting one for this trip, but I think it would be great for sleeping with the kids. So how we did it in the tent was, we have a 4-man mech tent, and that's what we use. It's 7.5 pounds, and the boys were on 2 blue foamy mats, and one of the mats, my son was at the bottom. He's 3, he was at the bottom, and Sky was at the top. And so she was right beside me. And then I was on a mat, and then Daniel was on the other side of me. So that's how we set it up in the tent. When we're all sleeping in one tent, it's a lot, but it's totally doable. I brought a book, and we would burn the pages as we went to make it lighter, but I brought Charlotte's Web and another book about a dragon, and the boys were pretty tired, and so I would just the book, and they would usually fall asleep pretty quickly. And then once my youngest fell asleep, I felt comfortable leaving the baby in there, and he's a bit more unpredictable on responding to the baby. And so once he would fall asleep, my oldest would probably be looking at the chapter book or his little journal, and they would be sleeping in there, and I would go out to talk to Daniel for a little bit, or we would do a fire to continue burning the diapers, or we would go to bed. So that's how we did the tent. For kids' clothing, they both had a merino wool set that they would wear as pajamas, or if they got cold, they would wear that and then their hiking clothes on top. And so they had a pair of quick dry pants, which my grandma found at the thrift store. They were awesome. That was good. They wore those on top of their woolies if they were cold. And then they had a sun hoodie from Patagonia that you will see in all of my photos that got filthy dirty and covered in sap, which is just how they should. And so they wear that. Then they both had one fleece / or a wool sweater and a lightweight puffy. And then they had a rain jacket. And that's all they had for clothing, along with 2 pairs of underwear and 2 pairs of wool socks. Then they had a sun hat. Koa did carry a backpack. He carried an Osprey pack, the Jet, which is 15 liters, because honestly, we ran out of space. Like, we were so tight on space. We were trying to make things as small as possible so that they would fit in our backpacks. And so he carried all of Sky's diapers, which I'm so grateful for. All of the clean diapers for 1 week. And so it was just a lot of space. They weren't super heavy. Clay did start out carrying a backpack, but we sent that home on the second to food drop, because it was just a lot for him. And he's 3 and he didn't need to, but we thought it would be good for the team spirit to start out like that. And it was enough. He didn't need to do it anymore. For shoes, Koa wore a pair of Solomon hiking shoes, and Clay, we found a pair of just shoes off of Amazon that are just Velcro that he could put on that were sturdy. And then they both had a pair of Teva Hurricanes, which are heavier, but I feel like it's limited on kids hiking sandals, and those were really helpful. I wanted them to have 2 pairs of shoes in case of blisters or anything, so that was good. Okay, as for toys, super minimalist in this area. Also, I just feel like the less things we have, the more creativity. And so I thought, oh man, I do want surprises for them, or I do want a few toys. And so I brought those, a few little cute animals, really tiny 4 little plastic animals. And then we had a journal for them each, which were very small, and with 2 pencil crayons each. But I do want to say that as we were hiking, there was someone out there that was like, oh my goodness, are you doing a bunch of learning on the trail? Which made me like go on this rabbit trail. I think that sometimes as moms we do. We're like, oh my goodness, should I be doing more learning? What? And then I was like, no, we are doing a ton of learning. We are learning about the weather. We're learning about how to cook. We're learning about how to set up the tent. Like, we are, but also at the end of the day, I just felt like they needed more unstructured time more than anything. Like, they didn't need me to read them more books or to teach them more lessons. We were talking the whole entire trail and encouraging them and coaching them through things. But when we got to the campsite, they probably had about 2 hours before bedtime, or we would stay up late if we got there late. And they would just play and explore the creek or the lake that we got to. That time was so special. They were so creative. I just think it was such an important part for them and so special. And so my thought process was I probably didn't even need the little plastic animals or anything else. On the really long days, I had packed surprise stickers. That they love stickers, so I had packed some stickers that they could play with or get, and I had packed one hot chocolate pack per section for them, and so that was also like a surprise that they loved, as well as we did have one tiny pack of cards that we could play Go Fish or Uno with, and that was a fun surprise also. However, the days were definitely longer than we had hoped, and so we probably played cards 4 times out of the 24 days, so we could have gone without those. Okay, I packed pretty similar to my boys. I had 1 pair of shorts, 1 pair of long johns, and a pair of hiking pants. And that was nice because the bugs were so bad that I would like to wear pants. The one thing about my clothing I would like to say is I think they're called Injinji socks. They're toe socks, and they are incredible. They're made for hiking, and they stop you from getting blisters. And it's so true. I didn't get any blisters wearing these, so I'm so happy to have those. I had a normal pair of socks to sleep in, and then because I'm breastfeeding, I decided to bring 2 bras, 1 cotton bra for nighttime, and 1 merino wool. I got a Brandwin bra, which is from the United States, and those were both amazing. Super grateful. I also had a merino wool breastfeeding shirt, the Luna layer, I believe it is, from Wildlore, and that was super nice to sleep in, to be able to breastfeed in. And it's a pretty thick shirt, so it almost is like a sweater, I would say. So that was awesome. And then with that, I had a tank top that I wore every single day, a fleece, and a puffy, and a rain jacket. I would put them all on if I was really cold. For shoes, I wore trail running shoes, which are amazing. They are so wide. I have such wide feet, and so I'm just so grateful for these shoes. They work so well for me. If you have wide feet, you need to look into them. They're so good. And then I had a pair of Luna strappy sandals that are really lightweight to wear at the end of a day. However, halfway through the trip, I was washing clothes in a creek, and I stepped down into it. And I thought I sliced my foot open, and it was shearing pain. And I look, and there was no abrasion or any cut or anything. And so after hours and hours of pain, and then when I would move it in a certain way, I would get shearing pain with tears to my eyes. And I realized that I had broken my pinky toe, which was kind of crazy. And I was like, oh my goodness, we're going to have to end the trip. We're going to have to hike out. That fell on one of our rest days. And so we were at Marmot Lake. We had a rest day with our friend that hiked us in food. And anyways, I slept with my shoe on in my sleeping bag to support my toe so that it wouldn't be throbbing the night. That really helped. I did that for a few nights, and I could walk fine as long as I was in my running shoes. If I was barefoot or sandals, it really hurt. So we were okay to continue, but that almost took us out. There was also one other incident where one of our kids had a sore that got a bit infected, and we were thinking that we might need to go out because of it. But I had some saline from my contacts, and we used that, and it cleaned right up within 1 day, and so we were able to continue. But there was moments like that where we were like, you know what, if this gets worse, or if it's not going well, we're gonna have to get out of here. But gratefully we finished, which is just so incredible and so cool. Yeah, as for Daniel, he brought 1 pair of pants that he wore pretty much the whole entire time, and for sleeping in, which so many people can do. I can't, but that's amazing. A lightweight pair of shorts. He brought 1 t-shirt, merino wool, and then a sun hoodie, which he wore. And then he had a windbreaker, a light puffy, and a rain jacket. He used his Osprey Ether Pro pack, and he loves that. It's a 70-liter pack. He took the water filter, the stove, 2 pots, 1 bowl. That's what we shared to eat out of. We had 4 spoons. We had a bear line that he would put our food bags up into a tree. He would climb the tree almost every night unless we got to a bear cache, which was about every 4 days or so. He had his essentials kit, the meds, and majority of all the food. I had the Poco Premium Osprey backpack, which was good. I feel like when I wear that thing, it feels like I'm wearing a bus, honestly, because it's so big. But as we entered the 4th week, it got pretty uncomfortable. Other than that, it was awesome. It was good. It was comfortable. It's just heavy. So that, the kid carrier backpack, what we did was we put all the rain gear kind of in the backpack compartment behind where the kid is, where Sky was, and all that rain gear was there. So it was easy, accessible, but it was also lightweight. And honestly, we only had an hour of rain during the day on the whole entire trail. So that was so incredible. We had rainstorms at nighttime, which grateful they were at nighttime. There was one that was really scary, honestly. We were camped by Soda Creek up in the Alpine a bit, and there was a huge lightning storm. It was hitting Beehive Mountain behind us. If you've been in a tent in a windstorm, you know exactly what I'm talking about, where it is coming down over your head and you're like, are the poles going to break? And Daniela and I were awake like, okay, if the boys wake up, or if the tent poles snap, or all these different scenarios, like thinking it through what we were going to do. And we thought, if the tent poles snap, we are going to have to go into the trees and find some cover there and figure it out in the morning. But the tent poles were amazing, and they lasted, and they were totally okay. So grateful for that. But that was definitely 2 hours of a really scary storm in the middle of the night. Okay, let's go on to what we packed for Sky. And I know a lot of people are interested in this, and so if you have more questions about this, please reach out. I will add our gear list in the show notes, and so you can see what we got. So we did kind of 4 layers for her. We had a merino wool layer, which was super nice to be warm, but also to be like when it was super hot, almost like a sun hoodie, what the others of us had. We had a fleece onesie, which was warm, a cotton onesie, and a pair of wool leggings and a wool shirt. So that totaled to 4 different outfits. Then we had a Patagonia bunting suit, which was down, and that's what she slept in or wore when it was cold. And so she would wear multiple of those layers together if it was cold. I'm so grateful. She is such a warm baby. So she was not cold at night. I've had it previously where my oldest, when he was a baby, his hands and his feet got really cold and he would wake up a lot. And so because of that, I packed her 2 pairs of socks, a pair of mittens. She had a little wool bonnet. We had a sun hat. Anyways, I would put on all those layers if she was going to be cold, but she was not, so it was fine. I would say if you do have a baby like that, look into those rechargeable hand or feet warmers and see if you can use those to help you regulate their temperatures a bit more. I haven't used that myself, but my friend did, and that worked really well for her. We also had 2 soothers for her. I brought a teething oil and a homeopathic for fever pain. So that's what we brought for her, and 1 lightweight baby toy that we strapped to the backpack. So she was in the Osprey on my back, and I think at this time she weighed probably about 15 pounds. So in my lower compartment of my backpack, I had my clothes, her clothes, the boys' clothes, jackets, and if I had room left, if I could push it all in there, I would carry a couple bags of food from Daniel, like on our big drops when we had to carry 7 days of food at a time. One of the coolest things that I figured out on this trip was to have a fanny pack, because I find the side compartments don't fit that much stuff and not what you want, and you're kind of like twisted to the side to get stuff in and out of those. And so I had a fanny pack, which I was so grateful for. We put our snacks for the day in there, and then I had my camera, my phone in there, which I used as my camera, and that was super awesome. So I love that. I had a bear spray. We both had a bear spray, and I sewed the case onto my Osprey backpack because I was like, I'm always gonna want this. And so that was great. At one point I bushwhacked and lost the cap of the bear spray, which was so annoying. And so we actually left the bear spray at the side of the trail there because we did not want an accident where one of our kids would get the bear spray in their face. Okay, in terms of diapers, we thought about doing cloth, but we were like, if we have bad weather, the diapers will not dry. and so we did not want to go that route. We looked into finding the cleanest diaper that we felt comfortable burning, which we found one that is made out of bamboo and sawdust from what I can understand, and only the tabs that go around them are plastic. It is really hard to try and figure it all out, but we felt good about this diaper. We got the Naughty diaper. It's N-A-T-Y. She needed about 6 a day, and we're usually changing way more than that at home because she's in cloth diapers or because we don't have her in a backpack carrier all day. But 6 was just perfect for us, and at 6 months, Daniel would rip off the plastic tabs and we would burn them, and it would take about an hour and a half. And if we had a fire ban, we were gonna have to send them out on food drops or dig a really, really deep hole and bury the diapers, because technically they are compostable also. We did not bury them at this point, but I will try to do another episode all about diapers because there's more I could say about adventuring and traveling with diapers. We did end up bringing a pack of wipes, which was actually so helpful. Heavy, but helpful. On that note, I should also say that my older kids, the 3 and the 6-year-old, do not wear diapers at home, but on this trip, we just did not want to have any accidents when they have one down sleeping bag, which is also like their backup if they get really cold or if they fall in a creek or something. And so we got them to wear pull-ups every night, and that was a good decision because there was situations where we needed that. And so if we only brought them one each for each section, if it was destroyed, they would wear one of Sky's, which Sky is in size 4, so it's a very broad size, and it worked just fine. You know, when you're back there, when you're out there, you can't bring a lot of extra. You can't bring a lot of like in case. You just make work what you have, and my family's good at that, I have to say. I mean, my husband's really good at that. That's what I have to say. So that's what we did for diapers. For water filters, we used a squeeze filter, which we'd never had before, but that was like super awesome. We used the Platypus Quick Draw. It's a 1-liter one, and it's so fast. You fill up water at the top, you squeeze it through, and it goes into your water bottle. We had like 4 days left, and I squeezed so hard that the bag burst. So that did happen, but I would not do anything differently. I would say always have a backup like we did. We did have pristine drops and used those for the rest of the trip, but that was such an awesome filter, and we will get another one or probably get it on warranty. For communication devices, we both had satellite on our phone. I have a newer iPhone, so it's included in my phone, and then Daniel got a plan with Rogers where he could just put a new number on his phone that was with satellite just for a few months or that month, and so that worked really well. We were able to use that to communicate with people. Because we had 2 of those, we didn't take anything else. We felt pretty comfortable with that. For other stuff with gear, we ended up taking a trekking pole each, so technically just one set of trekking poles between all of us, and that was a good decision. I like hiking with 2 poles, so we almost brought 2 poles for me and 1 pole for Daniel, but because of all the hand holding and just connecting with kids, it was so much better that we only had 2 poles, and we all switched. We would make them smaller for the kids. Daniel would take them, I would take them. When I broke my toe, I used them exclusively for a week. Yeah. That was just perfect. It was good for creek crossings. Okay, that should wrap it up for gear. That was a long list of all the things. The actual gear that we use again and again on our backpacking trips, I created a backpacking gear guide with our favorite pieces. This includes the tent that we decided to go with after trying 2 different tents, the lightweight chair that we found so helpful, and the solar panel that we used to charge our phones while we hiked. So it's our go-to pieces of gear that we love, things that make trips with kids easier and lighter, and things that if they broke today, I would be going out and buying to replace right away so that we could have a smoother trip. So you'll find the link to this backpacking gear guide in the show notes. In closing, this trip was super special for my family. I'm so grateful that we went for it, even if we didn't know if we were going to be able to do the whole entire thing or what it was going to look like. And even though the days were very long and longer than we had hoped and anticipated, I'm grateful. I think that there's very few times in my life that I would be able to go on a 24-day backpacking trip, and I think it was very beneficial for our children. I think that there was no distractions. We were away from all the decision making we needed to do and all the other things going on, and so we could give full attention to our kids. And that looked like a lot of coaching them through hiking, but a lot of having fun with them and taking like time to explain things to them in a long version, or teaching them or doing something alongside of them. So that was just so special. I do feel like when I got self-service at some point at the end of the trip, I was more distracted, and it was really hard, and it was very obvious. I don't know that I've ever been away from self-service or house that long ever in my adult years, and so that was a really, really cool experience. My kids can now almost set up the tent by themselves. They are pros at it. They had so much fun at every single site, and just to have me and Daniel present with them was so special. There was one place that we went to called Dutch Creek Campground that is right before you go over the Tornado Saddle, and it's the most technical part of the trail that we did. It's a big scree slope. Anyways, that campground is really sentimental to me because before Daniel and I even dated, as we got to know each other, and we went to this place together, and I have such good memories of there. And then going back with 3 kids 10 years later was so special and kind of emotional for me, and just so stunning. It was one of the most special days of the trip for me. And then the next day, we do about 10 creek crossings, which are so full on with kids, and you're swinging them across the creek, and sometimes they drop their foot in and all the things, but they crushed it. And then we get up, and it's a huge scree slope. It's straight up, and it's scree that slides as you go up of it and over it. So Daniel went to the top, he dropped his pack, he came back down to help us. And Koa is like a mountain goat. He scrambled up that so well, and Daniel helped Clay up that section. And that is the only part of the whole entire 198 kilometers that Clay was carried, which is so impressive because last year, I hope this is an encouragement to you, last year when he was 2 years old, he could barely hike a kilometer. So he has grown so much in 1 year to be able to do up to 12 kilometers in a day. Anyhow, and then I am climbing up this with Sky on my back. It is very steep. It's slippery. They have actually gone ahead of me. And as I'm hiking up this, I am thinking about this documentary I watched before Sky was born. And before Sky was born, I was trying to surround myself by really positive and encouraging birth stories, and I wanted some from around the world. And so I watched one about this mother in Nepal, and it was talking about the limited health care that she has, and she lives up in a mountain community. And right before she had her baby, she was in like the last month, she was like, I've only had one other ultrasound, I want to have one more. To hike 3 hours to go get an ultrasound. And so she hiked down a mountain 3 hours, 9 months pregnant. She got there and they were out of power, completely out of power. And so I just was like mind blown hearing this story. She hikes 3 hours, there's no power for an ultrasound. And then she just waits a couple hours, the power goes back on. She gets the ultrasound. Then she hikes back up the mountain with her other friend who's pregnant. And I'm thinking about this as I'm hiking this mountain, and it was technical and scary, and my boys had all gone ahead of me and they were just fine. But I ended up in a steep section because the trail is not super clear there. And I was thinking about this woman, and I was like, you know what? Just slow down, slow your heart rate down. If you need to just stop right here for a while and wait, it's okay. The weather is completely fine. And I did, and I just was thinking about this woman, and we were okay, and it was okay, and you can do hard things, you know? But I was just really moved by that story and encouraged by it while I was going through something that was hard and overwhelming to me. That was a special moment and a huge memory. Then I will end on one more story about Koa, which I think this is just so hilarious and just shows how much we were learning about weight and through hiking. And so Daniel and I were like so convinced by the lightweight, the minimalism packing, and we tried our best to do it, but there's just other ways that we could not make the packing smaller because of kits or just because we didn't invest the money in it yet. And so we're talking about it nonstop. Koa's overhearing it all the time. And then one night he's going to bed and he's like, Mom, can you please carry this? I don't want it anymore. And I was like, Koa, it's just a sticker. It's kind of like a big sticker, but it's still a sticker. And I was like, no, Koa, just like hang on to it, put it in your journal, and we will take care of it when we get home. Like, I don't have anywhere to put it right now. We're on a backpacking trip. And he's like, but Mom, I don't want the extra weight. And I was just like, oh my goodness, like, you have heard us talk so much about this, and it is so true that none of us want this extra weight, but there's nothing you can do about this right now. And so it was so hilarious, even to the smallest degree. You don't want the extra weight. So anyways, I love that. When we drove home after our 3 hours of driving home, we pull up to our house and Koa says, I miss hiking. And in that moment, I was like, are you serious? I do not want to hike again the rest of the summer. I want to take a break. My back hurts. But to hear him say that, I was like, we did it. We did it. We got home and he still likes hiking. And so that was just so special. So if you're thinking of doing a thru hike or a backpacking trip or camping with your kids, I want you to know that it's so possible, and I want you to dream big. I want you to realize that you can cross things off your bucket list with children. It's totally possible. Whatever that dream is, whatever that adventure that you really want to do, I want you to know that you should try it. See what happens. That's all from me today. I'm gonna go check in with my kiddos. Thank you so much for listening. I'm grateful that you're here. Please reach out if you have a question. If you enjoyed this episode, would you please take a moment to leave a rating and a review? It honestly really helps the podcast grow to more people so that they can find it. And it's a free way that you can love on me. It honestly means more than you know. And I would just be so grateful if you could take a moment to do this so that more outdoor mothers could find the podcast. Don't forget, everything that we mentioned is in the show notes, from gear recommendations to trail recommendations to where to travel. So check that out, and we will be chatting so soon. We drop an episode every first and third Tuesday of the month.